My wife and I have this funny sort of relationship. Every time we agree to do some work, project around the house, we get started together as a team. And then almost immediately, I start to take on the role of the bonehead contractor that she had hired, and she takes on the role of the disgruntled client. Which reminds me of a funny story. I got this job one time working in this art gallery in Manhattan. This was like a premier gallery, and I was that day supposed to help one of their young stars. He was coming over to the gallery. They had just gotten all of his work back from the framer, and he was going to sign all the backs of his pieces. He didn't actually sign his pieces. What he did was he took a branding iron. He would brand each one. So I was there and I was unwrapping all the pieces and setting them up so that he could brand them. And he would interbrand them, and as they cooled, I would rewrap them and set them aside for the lucky collector who was going to get the pieces. And there must have been dozens of these things, and I was going as fast as I could, but I couldn't keep up. And he finally finished branding all of his work, and he left, and I was still there, left to continue wrapping all the pieces. So I'm working away for a little while longer, and then the art dealer herself comes in, and she's there with a art critic in tow. They're walking arm in arm into the space, and she asked me to start unwrapping the pieces again so that she can show them to the critic. This was some guy who wrote for one of those local free weeklies, one of those papers that really concentrate on movies and music. Anyway, she asked me to start unwrapping the photographs so she could show the latest body of work off to this critic. And I started to do so, and she's discussing the work with him. And then she says to him, "Wait a minute, wait, stop, look at this one, look." And she points to a particular image and says, "He's quoting himself." Now, I guess what she meant was that he was taking some reference to some old body of work and bringing it into the most recent body of work to signify its importance. So they left, and I was still there rewrapping all this work again, and I started to think to myself, I ought to start quoting myself a little more often. I mean, with me, it's not like anyone's ever heard any of the best stuff ever before in the first place. Really, details are really the thing that make a job look good at the end. It's all about the details. Which reminds me of a funny story. I had this job one time working for this artist. I was over there, and anyway, she and I got to talking, and anyway, somehow it came up that she had gone over to the house of this collector who owned some of her work, and she went to use the bathroom, and when she was in the bathroom, she discovered one of her pieces hanging above the toilet. Well, she came out of the bathroom and she told me she was so angry that she took out her checkbook and bought back the piece of artwork right there on the spot. She wasn't going to let him hang her artwork above the toilet. Well, I don't know. I've never really been in a position to buy back artwork from anyone who was foolish enough to buy anything of mine anyway, but one thing I have to say is that, I would think any artist worth their salt would have to admit that, half the shit that comes out of me belongs right in the toilet anyway. It's hard to be a genius every time you step into the studio. Going out for a drink after work can be a really nice thing. Help you get over all the problems of the day behind you and prepare you for all the problems you're going to have the next day. Which reminds me of a funny story. One time I was out in a bar with a friend of mine. We were having a conversation. I was telling him that I was really happy because I was going to be doing this, being in this pretty good group show at this really excellent gallery, and it was a great opportunity for me. Well, my friend said to me that he thought that was great, and he hoped that maybe there would be a chance that I could get some other opportunities at this gallery. Maybe do a show further on down the road. Well, I said to my friend I didn't think so because this gallery really dealt with much more established artists, and I didn't think they'd be interested in someone like me. Well, my friend said to me, hey, you know, you are an established artist. You're just not very popular. It's important to keep yourself well hydrated at the job site. You really do expend a surprising amount of energy while you're at work. Which reminds me of a funny story. The other night I was out at this party and I was talking to this friend of mine who's a model. She said that she was hearing so many great things about me and my artwork and wanted to know what was going on. Well, I told her I was kind of bummed out because I was totally broke and I had to go back to work painting houses and doing sheetrock work. Well, she told me I shouldn't be bummed out, that this was good stuff. That it's really good for me to be out there in the trenches up to my ankles in sawdust and joint compound. This was the kind of stuff that would keep me real. It'd be more grist for the mill. And I began to feel kind of lucky, that I had these skills and I would be out there, in the real world. And I raised my fist with, total excitement about having to get up this morning to come to work. So then I asked her how she was doing and what was going on with her life. She told me that she was also kind of bummed out. It seemed that she had just booked this TV commercial for some chewing gum and they were going to make her dress like some dorky scientist and act like a real geek. She was afraid this was going to marginalize her whole modeling career. I felt pretty terrible for her. I'm glad I'm not the one being marginalized. Hey, I love being a contractor. It is a really, really special job. You get to meet people in a really special, personal way that only their loved ones really get to know them. You're right there in their own homes, and you get to find out what their needs are and what it is that really makes them tick. And then at the end of the job, of course, you give them their key back, and they probably never think about you again. Which reminds me of this funny story. One time I got this job working for this incredibly famous art critic. I really loved this guy's work. So I went over there and I was in his apartment for about a month or so, building these bookshelves, and I really got to know him in a really special way. Eventually I started giving him my 2 cents on things he was writing for articles, and he even invited me to a Super Bowl party at his house. Anyway, I finished the job, and not that long after that I got asked to be in this group show in a gallery right around the corner from his house. It wasn't a very good gallery, but I figured, hey, he's a critic, maybe he'd come by and see what my work looks like. So I called him up and I was like, hey, how are your bookshelves holding up? Anyway, I got around to asking him if he'd come by and see my work, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, if I should know about your work, I would. And I thought to myself, so just who do you have to build bookshelves for in this town to get them to tell him about my work?